I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about true crime and psychology. Thank you so much for joining. Let's hop right into today's topic. Let's go.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we are going to talk about a difficult case. The Tanner Horner trial is currently in the sentencing phase. He pled guilty to capital of Athena Strand. And the difficult part listening, because there has been a lot of testimony about his trauma and his past and his diagnoses. The state laid out their evidence first. And I do believe the state is going to have at least one rebuttal witness. And I suspect that person is going to talk about sadism, and then also, I think that person is going to talk about antisocial personality traits or psychopathy. I do believe, based on some of the information the defense is trying to get from their experts, I do think the state has somebody that is going to testify, that's going to testify towards that. My heart breaks for Athena's mother, father, and stepmother that are in the courtroom. They are hearing all of this information. They're sitting there through it all. Um, and I am also thankful that every single mental health expert or school expert or autism expert has mentioned that none of his diagnoses caused this behavior. And because I was a little concerned with autism and his prenatal exposure to substances and all of those things, I was concerned about that being used to excuse his behavior. And even the defense has elicited from their witnesses that none of this excuses anything. The defense is attempting to put forth mitigating evidence. And what mitigating evidence is the defense is arguing for life in prison. It frustrates me when they show pictures of Tanner as a child and Tanner's young son. It frustrates me when they do that, but this is their role. I did see some emotion from Tanner when his grandmother started to break down crying. You really didn't see a ton of emotion during most of the testimony that's come forward. He did seem to show some emotion and have to control his reactions and responses when his grandmother was getting upset on the stand. He likely views his grandmother as more of a mother figure, because it sounds like she was the consistent adult in his life. And the grandmother did apologize to the family of Athena. I will not be showing any of the videos. We are not going to be looking at any of the clips. Please let me know if you all have questions about any of the things that have come forward. Please just put 3 question marks. That helps flag it on my end at the front of your question, or QQQ just helps me flag questions. Is the prosecution up next for rebuttal phase? And so I don't know where they are. So I think they had the defense said they had 7 more witnesses. I think that was like on Wednesday maybe, and they I believe they had Friday off. So the defense may have a few more witnesses, and then the state is going to begin their part. I am not sure. I don't know if the defense ended with Tanner's grandmother as their final witness. I am not sure. They haven't made that public, so they haven't mentioned in court what was coming next. All right. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the shout outs. The chat is being amazing. So, all right. I am watching this. So if you want to skip it, you can. um, I will be honest, I skipped a lot of the details of the crime. Some of the details have come up with different witnesses, especially with the defense. So on day 12, there was a special education specialist that talked about 504 plans versus individualized education plans. And she mentioned the fact that individuals with 504 plans could receive services after graduation. Um, and kind of made it sound like people without IEPs or people with IEPs, once they've graduated, they aren't eligible for the same services. I will say in Virginia, we have what's called a Disability Resource Center. They call it DARS because they make the A big. They want to focus on ability, they want to focus on what people can do. And that organization offers job training, job coaching. They also offer residential job training, or if somebody didn't finish their high school diploma or GED. So some states do have additional training resources. I don't think Tanner's problem was that he struggled with job training. This seemed like a predatory thing to me. So I'm just watching the evidence. I'm watching what happened. And my concern is that it seems like this was a situation, a very trusting community, a very trusting neighborhood. And I am going to break down. And so, content warning for why the expert said that Tanner did not meet criteria for the P file. And we will get into that a little bit later. So I will save that for when we get to her testimony. Let's see. Question: is there any chance his dissociative identity claim is true? No. So everybody, zero was made up. All the experts. So even the defense psychologist said that the defense. I forget if it was the defense forensic psychiatrist, because I think she said that it was a way for him to confess to the crime but not take responsibility, like not say I did it. That's what the defense neuropsychologist or the defense forensic psychologist and psychiatrist said, because there was a defense psychologist, forensic psychologist that testified as well. Everybody has said that he does not meet criteria for dissociative identity disorder. And really, his attempts to feign that was very bad. So, and they really said it spoke more to his not recognizing social cues, that he might have thought that people were believing him, and they weren't believing him at all. There are lots of individuals with autism. So this is my third video. So if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I already covered autism spectrum and psychopathy, and that's antisocial behavior. That's where an individual is doing crimes. That is not as common. Those two diagnoses going together. So antisocial personality disorder or features with an autism diagnosis. Individuals with autism spectrum disorder are more likely to be taken advantage of. And there's a very small percentage of individuals that likely have some other things going on. So I think he was also using substances. I personally do not believe his claim that Athena saw him using the substance and that was when he snapped. Because even the defense experts that watched the video have said he was calm. There was no snapping. He didn't look emotionally dysregulated. And so I personally don't believe the whole he was doing the nose powder and her seeing that was what caused him to snap. I think he was searching for her. And once again, I think that's his attempt to lessen his culpability, because if the jury sees him as a predator, I think they're more likely to give him the harshest penalty versus if they think this individual with this history of trauma and everything that he just snapped, but I personally don't think that he just snapped. And I because of those videos of his behavior in that area the days before, that even his interactions with the family, all of that looks like grooming to me personally. Like, it looked like he was trying to be friendly with the family. The video of him feeding one of the dogs, and I think that was on somebody else's property. I think I saw that on Facebook. I think I saw a video on Facebook. Um, I have really dug in deep to the after effect. So I don't watch the things that contain a lot of graphic details about the specifics of what happened, but trying to understand his diagnoses and um what happened, that has been interesting to me. Yeah, and I am glad that he is getting a vigorous defense. If I was a Texan, because tax dollars are paying those experts $100,000, $20,000, $50,000, because there was one expert that was paid almost $100,000, and so capital punishment cases, they can get expensive, because because there was a lot of discovery in this case, because one person said I think they did over like 100 hours of reviewing records between their assessment and everything. Their billing was like over 70,000, and plus that wasn't their final bill. And so yeah, to me, it looked like he was looking for a victim. That's how it looked to me personally. Um, all right. So with the education specialist, that individual talked about meeting with yes, I think they knew Tanner when he was in school, and he was identified as having an emotional disturbance, issues with peers, and had anger outbursts at times. He didn't always make the best choices. His emotions would impact his reasoning. This individual worked with him when he was in high school, worked with him for 4 years, and they brought up again that he was bullied in high school, and they talked a lot that he benefited from a supportive environment. Okay, all right. So that was that. Then the church pastor testified about his impression of Tanner as a child, and they did notice that he had autism. He was not disruptive. When he would get upset, sometimes they would notice that he would hit himself if something was unexpected. The pastor described that Tanner was on like music teams, and they had this stomp team that received awards. He attended church with his grandparents, and then one time the grandfather started to bring a bag to church that I think might have had weapons. The grandfather would bring a bag that had weapons in it. The grandfather is a Vietnam veteran, and so he was likely having some PTSD symptoms. And once he was no longer able to bring that bag to church, I think they stopped coming as much. On cross-examination, this pastor clarified that he was able to function in the group, and that pastor thought that the story was that Tanner was driving, hit her, and panicked. So that pastor did not know the true story. And it wouldn't be on the defense to prep witnesses for exactly what the case entails. I guess I'm just super nosy. Unless somebody told me I couldn't follow information about it, I would be following information. I just would. There were 10 diagnoses that were given to him. 10. I didn't write them all down. The one that gave him 10 diagnoses, I didn't even write them down. Um the most important ones are the autism spectrum disorder, possible bipolar disorder, ADHD. They diagnosed him with PTSD, but I would wonder if any of those PTSD symptoms were about him being in jail, because individuals being incarcerated can make you hypervigilant. You might have witnessed violence in jail. So that's where I wasn't sure, but I think he was talking about traumatic events from the past. Once again, none of those diagnoses explain what he did, excuse what he did, and even those experts confirm that. This is simply mitigating evidence. I was surprised they didn't diagnose him with a substance use disorder because of the amount of substances he was using and the family history of substances. Because it seemed like, I don't know if the way that Tanner described it to them, it sounded more like recreational use. But even if the nose powder story was true, and I don't think it was, I don't think it was. And I wish they had done a toxicology on him, but like when he was arrested, but they wouldn't have suspected substance use at that time. So maybe that's why a drug screen wasn't done. I just would love to have had that type of information. Oh, I'm definitely a curtain twitcher. So Kathy from Gossip Rumor and Innuendo. So when stuff is going on my street, I now have Ring cameras and I can check out my Ring camera. I'm in my community Facebook group. I got off next door. Next door was just too much. Was just too much information. But yes. All right. So then a witness testified was friends with Tanner in the 5th grade. This individual had narcolepsy. She was the one that ended up dating him. And so this witness had she crochets to stay awake and not pass out. So narcolepsy is where an individual involuntarily, sometimes even when stressed, they might involuntarily fall asleep, and it can happen at different times. And it seems like crocheting is something that she does to stay grounded and like stay engaged. She was tearful at times on the stand. Her image was blurred. We could not see her, but she talked. So I'll go into a little bit more. She described him as energetic, talkative. They attended church together when they were in the 10th grade. They stayed friends throughout high school. They hung out more in high school. They dated, and she started to go into the fact that Tanner chased her and her new boyfriend, and the defense kind of cut her off because it seemed like that was an aggressive action. And of course, the state followed up. The state was like, so tell us what happened. So what happened when Tanner found, because it seemed like he chased her down, and but he walked 20 miles to her house because and she was concerned about his safety. He wanted clarification on why they broke up. Like it was but the defense, and I think the defense wanted this witness because her and Tanner dated, but I don't know if she was the one that said that Tanner dated controlling women. That was probably that was probably somebody else. There were so many people, and they're all blurry, and I forget names all the time anyway. And so that's why I have my notes. All right. So let's see. Um, she ended up getting married and they maintained some contact. She's separated from her husband and is she's dating somebody else now, and I think they have children together. And that's where in Virginia, if you're legally married and you have a child, they list that child as your husband's child legally. Like there's a whole, or maybe she's legally separated. I had some questions. Once again, my curtain twitching, and I just had to mind my own business because this wasn't about her. This was not about her. Tanner did not do any post high school education. It sounds like he struggled to maintain jobs. According to his family, he was motivated to try to keep a job once he had a child, and his child's mother supposedly had bad postpartum depression. They're putting everybody's business out there. Like everybody and their mama's business is all out here for everybody to see. Um, okay. So for the DSM diagnosis of DSM-5. All right. So in the DSM-5, the category, let me see if I can. I'm seeing abstract. I'm not getting. All right. So let's see. And I wonder what the state's expert is going to say. I'm going to wonder what the state's expert is going to say. And also, I don't know that he targeted Athena because of her age. I think this was, if it had been somebody who was 12, if it had been somebody who was 15, if it had been somebody that was 16, the target for her age might have also been somebody that's less, like, that is more vulnerable, like that can't fight back as easily. So I don't know. Um, Individuals that get a P file that meet criteria for that often do have a history of they mo because it's prepubescent, so it's normally under the age of 12. They have multiple victims. That's the type of things that they look at. Those are the things that they are attracted to, and there's often some type of trail. And so I think that's why the psychologist, because they did not find that type of um or that the type of material, that CSAM, because they didn't find that on his computer or on his phone. I think that's why that individual was slow to give that particular diagnosis, but I don't know. All right. So let's see. Oh, this has been a very, very heavy case. And so please take care of your mental health as you're watching. Um, go back to the friend that testified, and um she mentioned that Tanner wanted to be friends with benefits and she wanted to date exclusively. And so they broke up a second time. She said that he was able to show emotional intimacy, and but her idea of emotional intimacy was just listening without judgment. And that's where I'm not sure. I don't know. But I'm a psychologist, that my view of emotional intimacy might be different from a layperson's view of emotional intimacy. She had her own history of past harm, and yes. On cross-examination, she talked about if she gets excited, she can have a seizure. She might jump or fall. And the state, I think, wanted to make sure to not cause any to not cause any of her seizure-like activity or narcolepsy, to not trigger any of that. She went into more detail that Tanner chased her and her new boyfriend at the time, and to ask them why, like why she broke up with him. And she confirmed, despite her history of a difficult childhood and a difficult upbringing, she is not a felon. She has no history of SA, of like towards somebody else. And that um when they asked if she was aware of what happened, I believe she was aware of the specifics of the crime, and confirmed that she had not talked to Tanner. And so that was that. Dr. Fritz. So outside of the presence of the jury, that is where they talked. It was a speech language pathologist, and talked a lot about alexithymia. Okay. So I will put that word in the chat so we all know what we're talking about. All right. So alexithymia. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. Zero was his. So in one of the interrogation videos, when Tanner confesses to what happened, he said, I didn't do it, Zero did it. That there was this alter ego Zero, but I don't believe it exists. Do you believe Zero's substance use came from, but I believe it's Tanner. I do not believe Zero exists. It's just Tanner. So nobody ever referred to him as Zero, nobody ever called him Zero. There was no alter ego. It's just Tanner. So Tanner's um, substance. So he was at risk to possibly use substances. He was exposed to his mother's substance use and abuse. He saw her. He saw her overdose twice, where she passed out on the toilet, and so then he was not treating his mental health conditions. So he likely does have ADHD. He may have bipolar disorder. And so he was likely using substances to cope. That is what his mother had done as well. There was a strong family history of attempts towards self and some other things. None of that excuses. It just lets us talk about it. I totally get it if people need to skip this one because it is a lot. It is a lot. All right. And with the fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, so that's where I learned something new because so uh, exposure. So there is brain development that happens very early on, and a researcher. So I have never researched fetal alcohol exposure or syndrome, and I do know that if somebody is using substances in pregnancy, the sooner they stop, the better it is for the developing for the developing child, and um sometimes people have to, so let's say they're using opioids or something like that. Sometimes the doctors have to work out what's safest for everybody involved. And so I will get to some of that testimony a little bit later. All right. So we'll get there. All right. So going back to the alexithymia, let me pull that word back up. And what that is it is a personality trait where an individual has difficulty identifying, understanding, describing, and processing emotions. In general, it can affect about 10% of people. Individuals on the autism spectrum, it can impact about 40% or so. And that's where individuals have really strong a lot of difficulty understanding and kind of explaining their emotions. What it can look like is um, I really like the self over rainbow. I'm going to share my screen. All right, here we go. I have to close the window. There we go. And so what it can look like is I know something's wrong. I just don't know what. A person might not realize that they were upset until hours later. They might feel it in their body before their brain can name it. A person might, and this is not a diagnosis. So this is a feature. Okay. So this is not a diagnosis. Okay. This is a common feature. So when we talk about mental health, sometimes we'll talk about so a common symptom within depression might be anhedonia, like not wanting to do things. And so things a person used to enjoy, they don't want to do anymore. We call that anhedonia. It's a psychology term to explain a depression symptom. Alexithymia, it's not a diagnosis, it's just a way to describe certain symptoms. And so, yeah, my husband, I've asked for Mother's Day for him to work on fixing the internet. And when I share my screen, I think it really hates it and it gets even worse. So I won't share my screen too much. All right. we have done all the things we can do on our end. We now have to, Verizon is probably gonna have to send a tech out to the house to help us fix what we have. All right. So they went into alexithymia, and I just thought that was interesting. And his grandmother, during a phone call, Tanner didn't understand why people in jail were looking at him like he was a monster. And she had to explain to him, imagine if somebody had done that to your son. And he said that he would attack that person, that he would, like, if somebody had done that to his child, he would he would attack that person. I wonder how the jury will take that reaction or response. It is what it is. The Dr. Fritz talked that her opinion changed after watching the abduction video, that he did not demonstrate the emotional dysregulation that you typically see in individuals on the autism spectrum disorder. That part right there made me go, well, is that more of an antisocial, psychopathic type trait versus autism spectrum? Was there something more evil, sadistic, menacing that was not consistent with autism, bipolar disorder, ADHD? It wasn't this impulsive, out of control action. It was a methodical, planned, and that to me comes off more psychopathic, antisocial personality traits. That's how that comes off to me. But yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah. All right. Um, let's see. And then it was so much. I think I don't think I've even gotten to the next day yet. I watched this on 2 times speed. If you are watching this coverage, Grizzly True Crime adds in a little bit of snark. She does pauses. I've just been watching it on two times speed because it lets me take notes and get through it. But the fact that he didn't show the emotion dysregulation that this expert was expecting to see, that's where I was just like, huh, I wonder if the jury is going to fill in the blanks, or if there's going to be another expert by the state that's going to describe that behavior as sadistic, planning, and out of the norm for his mental health conditions. I wonder. They talked a lot about his communication deficits and all of that. On cross-examination, the state asked Dr. Fritz questions about her findings and her report. She admitted that she did not watch the full 30 to 40 hours of him driving the truck. She admitted that that Horner was able to clearly communicate false information to investigators. And she admitted that acting as Zero, he was able to clearly communicate the true location of Athena's body. And on the topic of remorse, because a lot of the defense experts want to say that the letter that Tanner wrote to Athena's parents was showing remorse. But to me, he was blaming FedEx. And let me also clarify, he worked for a contractor of that. Like he didn't work, but he worked for a contractor that had like a contract with FedEx. And so he wasn't employed directly by FedEx. I know the family had a lawsuit against FedEx. I don't know what happened with that. The state pointed out the fact that within his supposed remorse, there were still lies. There were still lies about the incident within that. And Dr. Fritz admitted that she was surprised by the violence. Afterwards, he was smoking a cigarette. Like, he didn't seem upset or anything. And she also admitted that she never saw any nose powder use. He alleges that he covered the camera to do that, but it seems like he covered the camera, and my watching and hearing all the facts, it seems like that was when he covered it at a time when if he saw somebody that he might have done something. Um, uh, she admitted that what he did to Athena did not play into the theory of big reactions to small problems. That and that he said if it was his child, he would have killed the person while he was on the phone with either his mother or his grandmother. I might have said it. I might have got that part wrong. It was either his mother. I thought it was grandmother. I'm almost positive it was his grandmother. So then day 13, there was a witness that before they even started testifying, already kind of in tears. They lived in the same neighborhood as Tanner, and her son was a year older than him. They both were on the autism spectrum. They both were bullied. She talked about specific instances of bullying where she actually ended up taking some of the bullies under her wing because I guess they were living with their family in a tent and maybe didn't have enough food. And so she was just overly kind. She does prison ministry, and I think her whole thing was just I don't know, to talk about the Tanner she knew, but the state asked her if her son, had any major struggles, and she did say that he struggled with the death of a family member. He has 2 children, and the last time she saw Tanner was a while ago. And so then there was Jay. Jay testified. Jay was very nervous on the stand and talked about considered Tanner to be one of his best friends. The Tanner he knew was a goofball, fun to hang out with, would play Yu-Gi-Oh cards. The grandfather would compare Tanner to his mother. I don't recommend that. Even if the child is exhibiting behavior that's very similar to their parent that has a problem, getting that child help for their problem and not saying you're acting just like your mom, that just it it ends up coming off as criticism and name call. It normally doesn't help situations at all. Tanner's mother would supposedly belittle and scream at him, and um, and then that's where the topic of Tanner possibly having history of being of having his own childhood history of harm came up. I don't know if that's so. They had this whole story that Tanner might have been a victim of SA himself when he was 10 years old, and there might have been some because it was by a man. That's the allegation that I don't know I think it was like a landlord or something that um and so and that Tanner was really afraid that he would be considered gay. And I just wish that he had got some help and support because children that are um the only word I can think of is sexualized as earlier than they should be. So a 10-year-old should never have that experience that he alleges that he had, but that's where you get help and support. And so there can be people that have an unhealthy view of of intimacy based on their experiences. Most people do not end up harming other people. But there are some individuals that can become reactive, and that is where there are treatments that can be helpful. I, I wonder if he truly showed no signs of any sexualized type behavior, because they mentioned that after that, supposedly that he might have started like um, holding, smearing feces, and that there were some behaviors that supposedly happened after that. We do not know if it is true. Once again, trauma does not cause something. As a therapist, I just like to kind of get the full picture. Yeah, so I don't know. So it would make sense with his story that there might have been something like that. Um, but instead of taking ownership and getting healing, he became a predator himself because there were 2 teenage girls that alleged when he was a young adult that he did not listen when they said no. And so that's where I wonder how much of that was true. I'm really interested to hear from the state's psychologist, as whoever the state has on their team, any rebuttal evidence. I'm really interested to hear that. Oh, then they had Tanner's celly. So they had somebody that's next door to Tanner. This gentleman was very animated. He used a lot of slang. I could not watch him on 2 times speed. I had to watch him on 1 time speed. The poor court reporter, because he would have to slow down and re-say things for her, because he was using a lot of jail terminology. He's been incarcerated for a while, and I think he has another incarceration. Like, I think, because I don't know if he has a try. I wasn't getting a good idea, but because I think Tanner is in a holding facility right now, because it seems like he was released. Because I thought he said goodbye to Tanner, but then like he was back, and I was thoroughly confused. His testimony added nothing for the defense, in my opinion. Um, this guy talked about worrying about other people taking advantage of Tanner, that Tanner was nice, blah blah blah. Like he said a bunch of those things, but um I just I didn't see how that was particularly helpful. Um uh so then there was the forensic psychiatrist that testified. Her rate was $700 per hour. I think it was she. Yes, she. Yeah, $700 per hour. Whew. Yes, she put in at least 100 hours. That's where I got my 70,000, plus she's done additional work. So her bill is probably about 100,000. And that bill goes to Ohio State. And that's where I have questions. So if she brings in a contract that gets $100,000 for Ohio State, does she get a bonus? Like what? Like I would have some questions, because there's no way the business I work for, because you can't pay me $100,000 in one case I brought in pulled 100,000. I need a bonus, I need something. But that wasn't part of it. That wasn't part of it. And so she got a temporary license to practice in Texas. She prepared a report. Maternal history was significant for depression, trauma, schizoaffective disorder, substances, multiple attempts on self. And then she diagnosed him with autism, ADHD, PTSD, major depression, motor tic disorder, and a rule out of bipolar disorder. So what a rule out is if somebody isn't meeting all of the criteria. Because if you're not sure, so if you haven't seen them in a manic state, because in order to get a diagnosis um, of bipolar disorder, you have to have had a manic episode. And so by diagnosing major depression, but it sounds like they thought there might have been some bipolar. I don't know. But the ADHD with everything else, I don't know. And one of the experts made it sound like Tanner might be on medication and that he might be doing well on that medication. So they might have prescribed him an antipsychotic or a mood stabilizer. And there are some mood stabilizers that are also antipsychotics. And so they might have prescribed him something. I don't think his medication or lack of medication had anything to do with this crime, because I think it was just an evil, evil act. That's my own personal opinion. Okay. She talked about his eye contact was intense during their meetings. He just stared. He didn't look away. Um, and that he has a history of focusing on the parts instead of the whole. So when he was a child, he would play with the wheels instead of playing with the entire car. So she just went through all the different ways he met criteria for those different diagnoses. She also talked about pica. So pica is where children can sometimes eat inanimate objects. For individuals on the autism spectrum, because he might have had a fascination with eating coins that wasn't pica. Because normally with pica, it's not just that they're eating one thing, they're eating a lot of different inanimate objects. And there can be safety concerns. You really have to watch it. But uh, so the whole thing of pica came up, but yeah. All right. And they talked about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and that individuals with uh, prenatal exposure to alcohol between 6 to 8 weeks are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, and that there's some correlation with autistic traits as well. And correlation versus causation. So, drinking during pregnancy doesn't cause autism, but individuals that had the fetal alcohol exposure, that they found a correlation, that it's related, but it's not causal. But yeah, all right. Correlation is not causation. I have a whole other video just on that. All right. So then the state asked her, did these diagnoses cause him to do this? And she said no. Did any of these diagnoses lead you to believe he was insane? No. He pled guilty. Mitigation is not insanity. And I'm glad that they clarified this for the jury. This was the first point I had heard them clarifying this. So he ate a whole bunch of coins. It wasn't just a few. Like he would eat all the coins. My understanding, he ate a whole bunch of coins. But I never ate any coins. My son never ate any coins. But I don't know. But with insanity means the person did not realize the wrongfulness of their act at the time of the crime. The defense did not even attempt that. They did not even attempt an insanity plea. They're attempting mitigation for the penalty phase. And that is something that the defense gets to present, especially in a capital case. And often they're even more funds because it is a capital case. Because if they do a really good job this first time around, because if he does get the DP, then he'll have all of these appeals. And let's say the judge didn't allow the cellmate to testify. An appellate judge could be like, nope, you should have allowed that person to testify, and they have to go through this penalty phase all over again. So making sure that they do a really thorough job on this part, that makes it better. Like there was his former babysitter. She was babysitting him at 10 years old and he was an infant and she was only 10. She talked about him pooping out coins. It was a whole thing. All right. So let's see. The state also asked her about, oh no, there we go. So let me go back up. The state also asked about, did these diagnoses prevent him knowing right from wrong? She said no, that had no impact on his ability to know right from wrong. And she described him as a severely compromised individual that struggled to understand how, I don't know, so they have a lot of people that are really supportive of him, and it is what it is. This is why I don't do forensic evaluations. I don't do. I don't do forensic evaluations. And any person that the defense calls in this process is going to be somebody that has a favorable opinion for the defense. And there is a way, because the jury is ultimately the one that decides, is this mitigating evidence? So it's not up to the experts. The experts can't tell them, because of this, he should definitely, it is up to the jury to determine, to rule if any of this is mitigating. It's up to them. So we'll see. Athena was 7. And that's, I suspect, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. His only 2 options are life in prison or the harshest penalty they have in Texas. So the doctor described catastrophizing that and so she tried to say that Athena seeing him, according to his story, and I don't believe it's true. According to his story, Athena seeing him use the nose powder, he catastrophe. Now I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to not be able to feed my family, and so he had to do something about it. But it was like, but no, I don't think that fits personally, and it was very difficult testimony to listen to. And then that's where the whole history of his possible trauma as a child came in. They went into alexithymia again, being able to understand and express emotions. They talked about the letter to the parents. And then she's the one that went into the paraphilic disorder. Um, eh, Now, because he had the 2 incidents alleged against because that's where I don't know if he had any fantasies that did not involve consent. And there was this whole thing over on TikTok and Threads. Therapy Jeff. Therapy Jeff had to apologize because he did a video after. So there was this string of men that were drugging their wives without their knowledge and doing bad things. And so he made a video talking about people that have those types of thoughts to get help. But what he did was he centered the perpetrator and not the victim. And so he since did an apology video. He has like 3 million subs on TikTok. He has a whole bunch of people over on Instagram. And I think it was a People article that I saw. Like it was a whole big article, because a bunch of therapists called him out. A bunch of people talked about it. So and so I would personally wonder if there was some type of sadistic thing about control. And that's where I think the state might have an expert with a different opinion. And we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they say. Day 13, we're getting there. I think, okay, day 13, 14 was the last day. Okay, so day 13, forensic psychiatrist, they cross-examined her. She had to stay overnight in Texas, poor lady. So she was still being cross-examined about um his truthfulness, and it was what it was. And the state questioned Tanner's credibility. Like, he's saying all these things. Why are you trusting it 100%? And I don't know. She gave an answer. I didn't even write it down. Her report was 38 pages. She was paid close to $100,000. At least the Ohio State was paid that much. She provided 10 diagnoses. And yes, it was a lot. And so she said stress can cause him to become dysregulated, but he wasn't dysregulated in that video. And so that's where I hope the jury's paying attention to that part, because all these people talking about all these disorders and all these diagnoses, that was not, in my personal thoughts, at play during the video. That I will not watch. I've heard, and that's good enough for me. Um, he started using substances at 18 years old. He wanted to fit in with the band, but based on some of the other band members' testimony, he got one of the band members on like Molly and X and stuff. And so, like, sometimes he was the one recommending drugs. And so, like, that's where they kept painting him like this victim. And I don't think he is. I don't think he is. And it is what it is. I'm also a biased person because I can't get over what he did to Athena. So I'll just be honest about that part. I would not, if I was called for a jury like this, because of the work I do. I personally, I don't know that I could keep a completely neutral perspective after seeing that video. So I would probably have to say, if you show me a video of somebody doing that to a child, nope, nope. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I could have been on this jury. There, to that jury, bless their hearts. because they have to go in and listen to everything. They don't get to look away. A lot of people have talked about um, the if the jury is going to have therapy, and it depends on the state. Texas probably, and this is a high profile, this is a very triggering case. I'm guessing the judge will likely let the jury know these are the resources they can reach out to. This is how they can use the free therapy sessions if they need them. When they screened the jury, they made sure that the jury was like they let them know, if you can't handle a case with these details, please let us know. Sometimes, because the video of what happened, part of it is audio only. And sometimes that can be even more distressing, because just hearing, because your brain starts, ugh, like, and so that's where sometimes it being audio only can cause more distress. And the court actually gave them a break, because I think they listened to that. I think it was a Wednesday. Court did not come back until I think the following Wednesday, or it was like a Thursday. I don't know. I think it might have been on a Thursday that they played the video, and the court gave them 3 days off, that Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then they continued with the defense's case that following week. So what I was talking about was an article about, let me see if I can find it. Article, because it was not about the guy in there. It's called our online R Word Academy. Okay. So like, in order to click on the article, CNN gives you a warning that this article contains details of essay. So it's called, you don't have to, but it's called Online R Word Academy. Okay. And so it's not about that one case. This is a much bigger thing that all right. Yeah. I do think that he will be segregated, especially due to the nature and prominence of his case. I think you all probably heard the guy, oh, what was her name? Um, he unalived his niece, and then Jarvis Butts. Jarvis Butts, I did cover his case. He died in prison after he was sentenced. There are conflicting reports of, did he die by his own hands, or was he harmed by somebody else? And I don't think anybody, but he had a long history. He would meet criteria for a P file, because he had multiple victims, multiple, ugh, like his case is very, very, it's bad. It's bad. And he did these things to his own children, his nieces, to family members. That those were his crimes, and he unalived himself. But yeah, all right, we're gonna keep going. Let's see. Question: how is life in prison worse when they don't feel the same way as normal people? So it's not a matter of, oh, so y'all might be going back and forth about whether life in prison versus this. Yes, Naziah Harris. Thank you for saying her name. Yeah, yes, thank you. And it's going to be up to the jury. If the jury decides life in prison for him, it'll be. I think the family might. I don't know what the family wants. Um, and nothing is bringing Athena back. Somebody asked me on a prior video if this won't give them closure. Let's say he does get the DP and he does have an execution date and he's executed, they will still live with this horror for the rest of their lives. And so I don't there's nothing that can bring back their daughter. He wants to still be on earth for his son, and that's where her family might not feel that that's fair, because he took somebody else's child. And so I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. Autistic. I've had depression, anxiety, PTSD. Yes, from DV. And no, I've never thought about, yes. And yes, no matter how hard my experience had been, this dude, yeah, don't get a pass. Exactly. So I agree. I don't think any of his diagnoses have anything to do. And this is like a big sad song, a big sad story. I could not get through all of his grandmother's testimony. I was all tannered out. Like it was, oh, it's been a long week. I tried. I couldn't get through all of it. At one point I wrote blah blah blah. Like it's like she's advocating for her grandson. And once again, like my like I just couldn't. This is called a ouchie. And it gives, so it's a harm reduction. I've worked with clients that engage in harm to self, and this, it doesn't break skin, but like it's just cool. I like it. Yeah, so it's called an ouchie. But I could not get through all of her testimony. And every now and then the camera would pan over to Athena's family, and they're just sitting there. And I don't want that kind of strength. I don't want it. And I'm being honest. I don't. And so my heart goes out to them, my thoughts, my prayers, my good positive vibes, all of those things, because they are doing something that I, as a licensed psychologist, I do not ever want to be in their shoes. And I think that's honest. And their life after, it's never going to be the same. This is their loving daughter. They they're never going to get her back, and that sucks. He made a horrific decision, and when you lose a loved one this way, it can create this traumatic grief. And so I do hope that at some point they maybe do some EMDR or they do some trauma therapy. Um, Sometimes after an event like this, you can make it to where you don't want your child to ever leave the home. All she did was she walked up to a truck to get a package. Like, so my son used to walk up to the mailman and and get packages. Do you know, like what happened should not happen. And if I was working with her family, we would try to find some type of normal at some point. We would gradually start to learn um, how we can trust. It also infuriates me when they try to make it sound like Athena asking, "Are you a kidnapper?" Was that the thing that sent him over the? But he was kidnapping her. Like she's a smart little girl, and she's just something didn't feel right to her, and she did nothing wrong. Her parents didn't do anything wrong. And you should be able to just let your kids play, and you shouldn't have to worry about some stranger coming and abducting them. And so it works. So hard. All right. So now she and she had learned, so Athena had learned about kidnappers at school. And so I think that's where she had that language. And I think so the state, I did see the teacher, I think, that talked about that. I think she was one of the first experts, day one of this, talked about that all school activity that they had done. And uh, um this expert did not feel that he met criteria for antisocial personality disorder, did not believe he had a pattern of irresponsible behavior. I object. I can't object. I'm not a lawyer. I have a different opinion. He had like a whole bunch of substance use. But he had at least two allegations of SA. He struggled to keep a job. He texts his boss like "F you" or so something about dishes. He got mad at his job. I think it was Outback or something. He had to do a whole bunch of dishes, and he got mad about it. He just texts his boss like "F you" in those dishes. That's the gist of it. That wasn't exactly what he said, but I think there were at least some antisocial features that were outside of a diagnosis of autism. So antisocial is against social norms. It's not wanting to be around people. All right. So I like to clarify that. She said it was after 15 years old, so it can't be antisocial. So what she said was that he had to meet criteria for conduct disorder. Hmm, I don't know. Well, it's fine. And also, somebody can do a horrific act and it be an antisocial behavior and not meet criteria for full antisocial personality disorder. So I likely, if I had met him and I was doing a diagnosis, I likely wouldn't have diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, but there are some features in my thoughts looking from afar. I don't know that to be true. I never assessed him. This isn't a diagnosis. Just in general, from watching from afar, I suspect that the state expert is going to have a different opinion. I do suspect that. Especially since the defense keeps eliciting this type of testimony. Um, and they clarified again that the purpose of the evaluation was focusing on mitigation, because I think this expert did not talk about the details of the crime, I think. And because the state went through a bunch of the things he said that the person did not put in their report. And I think the state was trying to attack that person's credibility a little bit, that they're presenting this one picture to the jury, but there was very important information that they left out according to the state. And of course, different people, because the report was already long, but there was information that was left out, but all those notes were submitted to the state and the defense, and the state went through specific aspects of those notes. And I thought that was very interesting. All right. So then somebody else testified about knowing Tanner from work and that he had social anxiety. He started to get on medication 2 to 3 weeks prior to the event. The witness was not aware of the details of this case. And that's where when you don't even know what he did, I'm just like, no, I can't even listen to you right now. Once again, this is why I am not on the jury. But if somebody was testifying, character witness for him, and you don't know what he did in this crime, and I'm on the jury and I had to sit and watch. Oh, no, nope. So I'm not on the jury. And, but I would give somebody less credibility and their testimony less credibility if you don't know why we're all here. So those are just my thoughts. And I think that's why the state keeps pointing that out for the people that don't know. And they stopped telling them what the details of the case were, because the state started out telling them what the details were. Like, do you know? Like, we're here for kidnap, essay, and capital M of, and that whole story about backing into her was a lie. He did not back into her. He lured her into the truck. So it's a whole thing. We will get to the IQ scores. So just give me a minute. We will get to the IQ scores. All right. Let me just make sure the comments are okay. Yeah. So and my heart goes out to his family too. I think his grandmother did the best she could. It sounds like his mother is trying to get her stuff. I don't know. But nobody likes mom. There is lots of people, and she was on multiple substances during the time that we're talking about. And so yeah, that is what it is. Wasn't it disingenuous of the defense not to inform witnesses of the true nature of the crime? Because it's not on the defense to tell them all the details of what happened. Because once he pled guilty, if the defense reached out to the witnesses again, I think they might have had to. I'm not a lawyer, remember? So I might have to have like Josh Ritter on or something like that. That might be a question for a lawyer, because they might, because if the defense did prepare them and did tell them, that witness might back out too. Because could you imagine thinking it was one thing, finding out it was something else, and then being like, oh no, I don't want to testify. And so Everybody's juiced to be here. That's for so Courtroom Confidential, phenomenal channel. Make sure to check out. I think Josh. I think he already streamed today because he normally streams around 12. Um, why did these experts need to listen to the audio? They weren't going to ask him about it. So, but that's at least for it informs their perspective. So some of the experts did ask him about it. Some of them did not. But it did not inform their diagnosis because they're trying to diagnose him. So the purpose of the assessment were his psychiatric diagnoses. So the details of the crime might not necessarily for that because they're going back to his history. If we're talking about autism, ADHD, you're talking about your mental health at now and maybe around the time of the crime. Not getting into those details. And also, he hadn't pled guilty yet. So they might not have wanted certain things. I don't know. They might not have wanted certain things to come up. Because one expert did confirm that they put the information in that the defense wants them to put in. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? I heard that. One of the witnesses was like, because they consult with the defense, and if the defense is like, like, let's just take this part out, like, can you reword this part? Sometimes you are going back and forth because they're paying $700 an hour for this report, but all the information is still in the notes that are provided to the state. Because sometimes those interviews are recorded, and if it's not recorded, the notes that the person relies on to make their diagnoses are often provided. IQ scores are still given, and also when it comes to capital punishment, you can't do capital punishment with somebody that has an intellectual disability. So, and I think that's what they're trying to do with an autism diagnosis too. I don't think it's going to work, but there is somebody that has an IQ and under a certain number, they can because it's considered to be cruel and unusual punishment for somebody that has, like, intellectually they're at a child, and so they can only get life in prison. So there are certain laws protecting people with intellectual disabilities. But yeah, all right, I hope that's helpful. As an expert witness, would you need to know? So it depends on what you're called for. If you're called by the defense, you answer the defense's question. And then you're honest when on cross-examination for the things that you can't get into. So for the purpose of mitigation, the details of the crime, they didn't need to ask him about it because they're talking about mitigation, the mitigating evidence. So I don't know. And one person I think asked him about it, but just didn't put it into the report. So there wasn't a time of the offense, or there wasn't like an offense part of the report. And so it is not being used as an acceptable excuse. So it's not, because all the experts have said his diagnosis of autism, none of that is the reason why he did this. All right. And so, yes. So the defense experts have all said none of his diagnoses explain that none of that has to do with the offense. And I appreciated that. That's why I wanted to cover this case. That's why I wanted to talk about it. It's not being used that way. And I wasn't saying the autism was an intellectual disability. So yeah. So yes. So but for the laws that are there, because that's what Brian Kohlberger, his attorney was attempting to have the death penalty taken off consideration because of his autism diagnosis, supposedly. And I don't know if he had like a childhood confirmed. We never saw all of that information. I don't know. But there have been times when the defense have attempted to get it off because autism is considered a neurodivergence. And then because there are certain laws protecting certain groups and classes. Autism is not an intellectual disability. I hope that's clear. Have ever been a paid witness? Yes. In family court cases. And I used to do court ordered evaluations, but court ordered general psychological evaluations. And I was a part of a parenting capacity team where I did the general psychological evaluation and somebody else did the parenting capacity portion. I've also collaborated with kids in the juvenile justice system doing trauma and attachment informed assessments of them. I do not assess people for things like severe substance or for SA. So people that are harmful towards other people. That's a offender evaluation. I do not do those types of evaluations. So yeah. All right. Yes, yes, yes. I'm glad we were able to talk about all this. Yes. And so I have a whole video where I talked about the difference between antisocial or psychopathology and autism spectrum because they're so within psychopathy, they're taking advantage of people on purpose. So an individual on the autism spectrum might not understand the social norm. So that's where I've worked with students on the spectrum. They might see this and like want it and really struggle with not being able to take it home. And it's not because they're trying to steal, it's not because it's just they're fixated on it and they might not understand this is Dr. Barry's, it stays in my office. And versus like somebody that's sneaky and is trying to get away with something. Now behaviors are behavior, but I did talk about the difference between antisocial behavior and autism spectrum because there is a very clear difference. And most individuals on the autism spectrum do not show signs of psychopathy. Okay. I hope that's very, very clear. Very clear. So he will not go free. His two options are capital punishment or a life in prison without the possibility of parole. Those are the only two options. He should never be among us. Never, ever. All right. All right. Welcome, welcome. I appreciate you all. All right. So now we are going to get into the contractor that worked for FedEx. And so Tanner worked for this guy for about 5 to 6 months. He talked about him having a solid work ethic, but he would show up late and he would like leave later than the other trucks. This guy just seemed like a good guy that like let somebody else borrow $1,100 just because they needed to. Tanner took a 1-week leave of absence, I think after some type of mental health episode. And then he went to work for the other contractor. Um, when the inmate testified about their anime and how cool they were, I was amused. But this guy that has been in prison for a very long time, he has never killed anyone. And yeah. So then there was a clinical professor of pediatrics and medical doctor, a visiting physician, and he got a license to be a visiting physician in Texas. He currently works out of Washington State. That's where we talked about fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And he charged $450 an hour and billed 30 to 40 hours, possibly 10 to 20 more. And the riskiest time to drink is between 8 to 10 weeks. And that's where, so no substance use during pregnancy, but if somebody is using substances, 8 to 10 weeks is a time that's the most risky. Tanner's mom says that she found out that she was pregnant around 8 weeks and that she stopped drinking immediately. She continued to use cannabis. And I think a later expert, because I talked about so cannabis use during pregnancy does increase risk for ADHD and some neurodevelopmental stuff. And they didn't talk about cannabis exposure in childhood, but I don't think there's as much research as fetal alcohol. I think there's more research for fetal alcohol exposure. And this guy, he has a whole clinic that focuses on neurodevelopmental disorders associated with fetal alcohol exposure. He was very knowledgeable and he talked about the significant splits between Tanner's verbal, nonverbal, and processing, which is common in ADHD, and it can be common with individuals on the autism spectrum as well. They also talked about his tics that sometimes with fetal alcohol exposure, those are 5 times more common in people with fetal alcoholics spectrum disorder. That's what he called it. He did genetic testing and there were no genes because like we do know that some genes can cause certain things and nothing flagged with the genetic testing. And he did talk about smoking cigarettes can increase risk of antisocial behavior and ADHD. And that's what, because mom smoked cigarettes and cannabis during pregnancy. And so I hope the jury listened to that part. I hope the jury heard that part because the mom did smoke cigarettes and we are on lookout for any possible antisocial behavior. So that was a check mark for me, but I'm just over here listening with my ears. Childhood trauma did additional damage and added additional risk because somebody can have genetic vulnerabilities or have exposure and not exhibit certain things down the road. His substances used were MDMA, cocaine. He had a whole bunch of other things. I was surprised that none of them diagnosed polysubstance use. None of them did, but okay. And he did not watch any of the other testimony. On cross-examination, that's where he had a full-scale IQ of 102 and a VCI, a verbal comprehension index of 107. And his lowest score was processing speed was in the 80s. And there were 2 different tests because he had done the Wechsler. So it's the WISC. It's a Wechsler test. That's the publisher. That's who designs the test. I do provide that testing. So when I test adults for autism, mood disorders, anxiety, ADHD, I use the Wechsler tests for children and adults. So when they were explaining this part, like my little psych nerd brain, my little psych nerd brain was like going off. But those differences, that's just going to tell me how he works at school. Like a full scale IQ of 102, cognitively, he had the potential to do college, to do other things. I don't think he had the drive, and I don't know. Like there were some other things going on, but it is what it is. They also talked about low testosterone. Okay. And that's where if you follow Grizzly True Crime, she has a short that's titled like, "Oh, poor Tanner," not something, but she's using snark. She does not mean it for real. But they talked about low testosterone, and it was just like, but that's where I was wondering if they got that result while he was in jail. Because like it was just weird. Because I would just wonder if that was the rate that they got while he was in jail. Because sometimes that can happen in the jail environment too. Because we don't know his testosterone levels necessarily. Because it was my understanding that was like a current, accurate, like more recent read of his levels of testosterone versus at the time of the crime. And so, yeah. Cannabis can cause low T as well. Thank you for adding that. And so, yeah. All right. And so let's see. So then the last day, we had a forensic psychologist that he only does forensic evaluations. He actually used to work at the Pines. So I received my doctorate from a school in Virginia Beach. And we had a rotation at the Pines residential facility. I think they've renamed it. I think it's become something else. Virginia went away from long-term residential treatment. And so some of those larger centers closed, but they had a forensic unit. I had friends that worked on some of their forensic units. And so it was just cool to like, I knew when he was talking about different parts of Virginia, I knew what he was talking about. But he moved to Florida. He got a temporary license to be able to do this evaluation. And his role was to confirm the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And he gave him 2 tests and he met criteria for that. He also gave him the trauma symptom inventory and indicated that he had significant trauma in his life, flashbacks, nightmares, high levels of anxiety, depression, anger, and frustration. For bipolar 1, this psychologist mentioned that medications have been helpful to stabilize his mood. And then for antisocial personality disorder, he said that he did not meet criteria for antisocial personality disorder, but he did not talk about the facts of the case with him. Well, that's where I was like, okay, it is what it is. But it was what it was. Then a PhD, so an individual that works with people with autism and helps prepare them helps them into adulthood, helps them transition into the community. Um, they mentioned, and it is very true, that sometimes individuals with autism, if they've mastered a skill at school, it might be hard to transfer it to home. And so that's where having well-rounded supports is really important. But once again, I don't think his autism diagnosis had anything to do with this crime. That's just my thoughts. Low percentage of people with autism melt down and cause into violence towards others. And this individual also did not ask Tanner anything about the case. So then maternal grandmother talked about her own history of childhood trauma. I think her father was an alcoholic, and that's when I put blah, blah, blah. It was a bunch of, so I don't love it when they're up here parading his family's trauma, but I think they're just trying to have the jury have some sympathy for what this family, but I just keep looking over at Athena's family and all that they've been put through and how this is affecting them. That's just where my heart immediately goes. But Tanner did seem to show some emotion when his grandmother was crying. On cross-examination, she talked about doing her best, that Tanner is responsible for his behavior. She thinks his problems had something to do with what he did. She was shocked. She didn't think it sounded like him. The details of the case. All the experts have said that his diagnoses had nothing to do. That does not excuse, defend, explain what happened. That's what the mental health experts have said. The grandmother sounded a little defensive when asked if she texted him a picture of Athena. So when Athena was missing, the grandmother knew this was a missing child on Tanner's route. And this was the first time I heard, because I have not followed every moment of this case. The grandmother texted Tanner a picture of Athena and asked, hey, keep an eye out for this girl, not knowing that he's the one that had already harmed her. And but she seemed a little defensive about texting him that, but I'm sure understandably. On redirect, she talked about still being angry about what happened and that she still loves him. That was that part. Let me know if y'all have any questions. I hope things finish up next week. This has been a lot. So this commenter mentions, I'm sure he has been instructed to show emotion during the trial. He really hasn't shown much. I didn't see much, and they haven't stayed on him a ton. But when his mother was talking, when anybody else was talking, I did not see much emotion from him at all. The first time I noticed any. And once again, I have not watched every single second. Sometimes I'm listening to it on 2 times speed and I'm not even I'm doing other things, ADHD, but I did see what I consider to be genuine emotion. But I think that emotion is about the position he's in, the position his behavior. I think it was tears for him. I don't think it was tears for Athena, if that makes sense. I think it was like I noticed that. Yes. And I mentioned earlier, his grandmother pretty much raised him. He likely views her as more of a mother figure. Um, um, and so yeah. All right. Let me know if y'all have any other general questions. I am going to take a little break from talking about this one. If I think the state experts are going to talk about sadistic stuff. I think unless there's some major new questions, I'll likely do a short to finalize this one. Yeah, this is it's so much. It's so much. I do hope this, and I do think the state is going to have some rebuttal witnesses. The rebuttal witnesses are probably from Texas. If you notice, all the defense experts are from out of state. The defenses had to find these experts. Like the defenses, they're flying people in from Washington State, Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if the state experts are from right there in good old Texas. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised. In order to get a favorable testimony, they may have had to throw a wide net, is what I'm saying. And there might not have been somebody local that was able to that had the credentials that they were looking for, because the defense has also tried to pull in people that have because one guy wrote the clinical section of the personality assessment inventory. Like they're pulling in some big name people, but I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. Banfield sentencing. Yes, I'll definitely be covering Brendan Banfield sentencing. Let me pull up this next week. Did I put it in? When is Banfield sentencing? Is it the 8th? Is it Friday? I didn't put it on my calendar. Let me know when his sentencing is. May 8th. I thought so. I thought it was the 8th. All right. So I will that'll probably be next Saturday. Mother's Day is coming up, and I think I'm going to do a stream with my mom. So I'll do a community tab post. If mom is still in the chat, we have to talk about it. Yes. And Courtroom Confidential is Courtroom Confidential Live, I think. I think that's the name of the channel. They stream, and then also I'm sure multiple other people are going to be streaming it as well. I'm going to be court hopping because I know Emily D. Baker is going to be covering it too. CC live trials. Yes. So I will be court hopping that day. Yes. And I just wanted to moment for Athena, such a beautiful, innocent little girl. So hard to hear and see what was done to her. Her loved ones need all our prayers and support. I agree. All right. And so I will, and then I will definitely be following Corey Richins' sentencing on Eric's birthday. I did see that the judge denied her request. So that will probably be that following Saturday. Let's see if we talk about Corey. So we'll see what we talk about on the 16th. But yeah. Mama's in the chat. Hey, Mama. So yeah, we'll have to talk about maybe doing a joint stream next week. But I appreciate you all. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. And Mother's Day, if you're in the United States, Mother's Day is next Sunday. My mother and I, we are going to go see The Devil Wears Prada 2. That is going to be how we're going to celebrate Mother's Day. Not on the day, because I don't want to go with all the people. So we're going to find another day and time that works out for us. But hug the ones you love, hold people close, be kind, don't do crimes. And I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.